Yeah. Hey, good.
and there are plenty of other things happening in our world right now that are not helping our stress levels. Hopefully during this event, we can help you all overcome anxieties you're facing at this time and find focus amongst the chaos. Thank you to those joining us online and our small live student audience. We recommend and encourage our live audience to wear masks. Viewers are also encouraged to ask questions. After our speakers present, there will be a Q&A for them to take questions from our online viewers and our live audience. Please go ahead and submit questions through the online chat. Now, welcome Martin Fry. Martin Fry is a successful business leader, tech advisor, and accomplished mountaineer and sailor. In April 2016, he set a Guinness World Record when he became the only person to climb the world's 7 summits and sail the 7 seas. His business career includes 13 years in Silicon Valley, leading Utah's Office of Economic Development, owning several companies in Utah, and being an active tech investor. Let's hear from Martin as he presents the adventure-driven mindset.
Thanks very much. I'm really pleased to be with you today. As I thought about what I could share with you that would help you the most as you think about building and strengthening your resilience, I thought about all the things that have gone on the expeditions and journeys I've taken around the world. And so for me, the idea of the adventure-driven mindset is probably the single most important thing that has enabled those that have dropped out of all these expeditions from the ones who've really made it. So I'd like to both share with you what that's about, and I'm going to take you on a journey up Everest. So join me as we kind of go along. So I'd like to first start by asking the audience a question. What do you all think is the most important thing you could take up Everest? Any ideas? Just shout them out. What do you think? Oxygen. You know, oxygen's really important, but people have made it to the top without oxygen. What else?
A jacket.
Warm clothes are really important. There was a guy who got stuck out there. He lost all his fingers and toes while I was there. Not a good thing, but not the most important. Anything else?
A good attitude.
A good attitude, absolutely. And this attitude of what separates those who can succeed in life, whether it's your summit is climbing Everest or your summit is something else in life, that's what really differentiates us. This attitude that how we perceive the world. Do we see challenge or do we see opportunity? This lens through which we filter everything. And so I invite you now to come on this journey with me. The first way we look at that lens is to look at life as a daring adventure. This idea that bring it on, I'm ready to step up to it. I'm not going to shrink from the challenges of life as we take on the responsibilities of adulthood or we look at mountaineering or other challenges. Thinking about it that way, Helen Keller said life is a daring adventure. She wasn't a mountaineer, but she embraced the opportunity to continually step outside her comfort zone and to look at that opportunity for growth as a way to first improve her ability to communicate and then to succeed in life in spite of her obstacles. So why does adventure matter? Adventure matters because it gives you opportunities when you do step out of your comfort zone to then build self-efficacy. Psychologists say self-efficacy is this belief system in your own capability to be successful. This belief in your own sense that you can achieve your outcomes in life. Another reason is self-determination. Self-determination is a skill set where self-efficacy is a belief system. And so this self-determination is how do you figure out how to get to your summit in life? And then finally, resilience. This idea, what do you do when there's a setback? Or whether you've had some past challenges that are causing a lot of turmoil in your life, or other adversity. How do you adapt to those circumstances and maybe course correct along the way? And maybe even better, that you grow from that experience and find out a better summit to go climb and grow from it in those ways. Don't try to remember these words. The way I like to have you think about it is this adventure mindset is a can-do, want to, and will do mindset. I can do it, I want to do it, and I'm going to take the initiative to go make it happen, and will do. I will do whatever it takes to be successful. Now we have to remind ourselves a lot of that. So as an audience, let's do can do, want to, will do. Ready? Can do, want to, will do. All right? You can always put an I in front of it. Thanks. One of the other things I want to share with you is that in entertainment is not adventure. We're in a society right now where entertainment is prevalent. Hollywood would love it if you would just sit back in your chair and let them entertain you your whole life. We're constantly given opportunities to go shopping or to do other things. It's just constant entertainment. But entertainment may be fun and it may allow you to build friendships, but adventure is where you step out of that comfort zone, you embrace challenges for personal growth, and that gives you opportunities to learn a whole lot more than you can with entertainment. You can learn risk-taking. You can learn problem-solving, decision-making. All of those things come when you embrace an adventure and a challenge. You can also learn to overcome your fears and as you face new challenges. And we all have fears. The reason this is so important is because I want you all as individuals to become the hero in your own journey. This is me climbing a mountain that had never been climbed before in Antarctica. And I loved it. I was the first guy to make it to the top. And I felt like I was on cloud 9. I want each of you, as you think about your life, to map out a future for where you'd like to go, to have that can do, want to, will do, to be successful as you slowly work up through the challenges to climb your summit, and that you can make progress. And when you hit some storms, maybe you have to hunker down a little bit, but don't stay in that tent too long. Get out there and then start up again the next day. I'm going to take you on a journey up Everest now. This idea started of envisioning my future when I was on a business trip to India. I had no idea at the time that I was going to go to Everest, but I decided to go up and fly up to Kathmandu for the weekend. And I chartered a plane and I flew around Everest and I went, holy cow, that is so big, so massive. Not only did I not understand how I could ever climb it, I couldn't understand how anybody else could. I mean, 80% of this mountain is below the clouds and you're not even part of the picture. But a couple years after that, I started to think, what would it take for me to one day climb Everest? I started to think about it as my mountain, my summit. And I put myself in that picture. And then I started to formulate a strategic game plan. What would I have to do? And who would I have to become in order to one day climb Everest? And so I had to train in the Wasatch, and I moved from Silicon Valley to Utah, and I was like, hey, what do you guys do here? And like, oh, we go play in the mountains. I go, what does that mean? And they go, oh, let's go for a hike. And then it was like, let's go ski. And then it was like, oh, let's go ice climb. So I hung out with my friends, but they invited me to be more adventurous in the mountains where that had previously been too far out of my comfort zone. From there, I climbed a bunch of different mountains and I practiced. Denali was great to test myself. And one of the things I learned on Denali is a lot of the guys who dropped out wasn't because they weren't physically strong enough. It's because they didn't have that right attitude, that adventure mindset to deal with the ambiguity and the uncertainty. When you increase your adventure mindset, you will have a higher tolerance for the uncertainty of life or for whatever the situation is. Your ability to stay calm in different situations will be a whole lot better. And we build that skill of controlling our limbic system, those fears that come up within us, when we practice through previous adventure and have successes along the way. And then we build those adventures up. So now I'm ready to take on Everest. So I fly all the way over there. This happens to be the most dangerous airport in the world. There's a big cliff in front of the runway. There's a mountain at the end of the runway. And there are only 14 stripes on the runway. So as we're coming in, we haven't even landed yet. And I'm already feeling butterflies. So then I started an 11-day trek to base camp. And there's the start. And as we're going up through the mountain region, you realize why the Sherpa people have never seen any cars or trucks. They have no roads, they just have trails through the mountains. And as we proceeded, I realized these Sherpa people, there's a lot to learn from them. They get up every day and they have to haul these huge loads up the mountains. This is their I-15 corridor here, like it goes through Utah, the main highway. And all there are people hauling loads or yaks. And you realize from that hard is good, that you have to feel comfortable just expecting that you've got to go to work and you can't avoid carrying these heavy loads in life. This is just part of the game, not about having and being comfortable sitting on the couch. As we got further along, this is the mountains and how big they are in the Himalayas. They're a lot bigger than the Wasatch Mountains we have here, and all of a sudden, it's feeling pretty intimidating, but I'm still going on my journey. The next thing that kind of messed with my head were all the tombstones that I saw on the journey, and all the people who died on Everest, and I'm thinking, why am I doing this again? And so reminding yourself of your why, and what's your purpose for doing. For me, it was about being an inspiration to others. And so I reminded myself of that over and over. When we got to base camp at 17,000 feet, you can barely breathe. You're just sucking out your lungs for oxygen. And all of a sudden, you're in this little tent, and you're on a glacier, and you've got a little team from all over the world that's come together, 12 guys who are ready to take on Everest. A big challenge, and not everybody made it. Everest is just a series of obstacles and challenges that you have to face one after the other. The first one is this big challenge called the Khumbu Icefall. And that glacier up above goes through that gap in the mountains, and it breaks up in these big blocks of ice. And from there, there I am in the green working my way through these big blocks, but you have to do it at night. And so as you're listening and are climbing with just your headlamp, you're hearing these big ice fissures groan and grind as they're falling down and they tumble down the mountain. And one guy who dragged a sled across Greenland freaked out and wasn't able to continue at this point because his mindset wasn't right and he couldn't handle the anxiety of the moment. The next challenge are the crevasses, these big fissures in the ice. And we have to use ladders to get across them. But not only that, I have 6-pound boots on. I have spikes, which are crampons on the bottom of my feet. Not the best thing if you're crossing an aluminum ladder. And some went up and some ladders went across. Here we are looking down 1,000 feet in this crack between the ice, and we're trying to balance on this ladder by holding on with these little aluminum ladders. Here's 5 aluminum ladders lashed together, and we had to make our way across as the ladder twists and turns with every step. And really unnerving, and the wind's blowing. Had to hold my head and my mindset in the right place to be able to do that. Here we are with a challenge that nobody told me about. Where the shadow line is at the bottom, it's probably minus 25 degrees. But where the sun is, it becomes a perfect reflector oven with the reflection of the sun off the mountains on both sides. And if you look at my watch, you can see the temperature is over 100 degrees. We're completely dying of dehydration because we didn't take enough water to effectively make it up in one piece. Here's a place where a couple more guys dropped out. And at Camp 2 at 22,000 feet, you're tired out, you're worn out, and you look up and it's still an amazing climb ahead of you and you can't even see the summit. In fact, for 48 of the 51 days I was on Everest, I never saw the summit. It was only right at the end. And so this idea of keeping our mind focused on our end goal in life, whether that's graduation or other big summits, and not letting all the challenges in the middle overwhelm us in the process. The next big challenge was climbing the Lhotse face. This big mountain above us is over 1 mile high. And I'm zooming in to give you an idea. And maybe you can just now make out those little tiny dots going up the trail of those climbers working their way up the Lhotse face, like here I am here. Well, initially, it would go well in the morning, but then in the afternoons, storms would come in every day. And one time this storm came in at 80-mile-an-hour winds, and we had to go all the way back down the base camp because the tents got ripped out. And so I get all the way back down to base camp. I had gone up as high as I could, and we'd trained and acclimatized, and there I am at the bottom and having to just realize that I had nothing left. I was physically, emotionally, spiritually spent. I had nothing. And so I called my wife on the sat phone and I said, honey, I am done. And I think I'm coming home. And she said, whoa, really? And she said, do you have to leave first thing in the morning? And I said, no, we have a rest day. And she said, great. And I said, what do you mean? She says, that means that you don't have to make a decision tonight about what you're going to do. You have another day. So that night, I'm in my tent, and I'm just feeling completely defeated. And I watched Finding Nemo on my iPad. And I'm there just watching it, and I'm crying, and Dory's there saying, Martin, just keep swimming. And I couldn't believe it. I'm like, oh no, man, there's no way. There's no way I can get back up that mountain. And I'm crying it out and just trying to come to grips with this idea. And finally, the next day, I just relaxed, and I got my wits about me again, and I started to recover physically a little bit. And then the next day, I was determined to get back up that mountain. So we went to Camp 3, and then from there, we got to Camp 4 at 26,000 feet. At this point, there's no oxygen. You have to, if you cut your finger, it won't heal. If you get sick, you won't get better. In fact, you can't even digest protein, and so you're losing weight. And you look up, and the technical part of the challenge is still in front of you. And so there I am, having to lay out a plan of how I'm going to get to the summit. And you have these milestones in your life, getting to the balcony or the Hillary step. And you take those milestones and you break them down. And each of those stars represents rope lengths. And each of those rope lengths I had to break into steps. And as I got closer to the top, each of those steps I had to break into breaths. And I had to breathe 5 or 10 times, hyperventilating just to get enough oxygen to take another 1 or 2 steps. I know that we can progress up our journey regardless of how hard it is. Here I am with my oxygen mask, working my way up, and then if you don't believe it's still cold on Everest, you can see our camera, the camera that took these photos. And there I am crossing a ridgeline. With my right hand, there's 10,000 foot straight drop. Below my feet are 6,000 feet straight down, and I'm on this little tiny step. And in front of me, where those other climbers are the Hillary step. And I've got to find a way to make it up the Hillary step. And so I do my mountaineering moves, and then I have to figure out what rope to climb on. But fortunately, there's a guy there, a Sherpa, who's willing to help me out. And then I come up to the summit plateau. This part that's only 100 yards away. It's like crossing a football field. But it took me like 40 minutes to get there. You can see I'm hunched over. I'm so tired and worn out. My legs are like jello. That guy in the red, he was so worn out, he couldn't even stand up for the summit photos. But I made it to the top. And I celebrated and I thought about how wonderful it was to be there. I told my family I loved them. And then you have to make a statement. You're on Everest. You got to do something. So I pulled out the UVU flag and I planted it on the summit of Everest because I wanted UVU students to know their college education will take them anywhere they want to go in life and that they can make it through school. And you guys can find your way to your summits, and your schooling and your education will take you anywhere you want to go in life. So there's the view from the summit of Everest. It's an amazing feeling, and it's really rewarding to be there. I'm grateful I was able to do that and to challenge myself And from that experience, I learned that I can do other things. I took on the other 7 summits, and there I am in Antarctica, having finally done what very few people had done in the world. And I'm looking out over the Antarctic plateau, and I'm enjoying and relishing in that moment. Yes, it was hard, but yes, we can do it. So what's your Everest? What challenges are you facing? Sometimes they're big challenges like a Mount Everest, or being very visible like a CEO or an entrepreneur. But sometimes our Everests are things that are invisible. They're wrestling with health issues or wrestling with emotional difficulties. Those challenges are just as significant as climbing a mountain. In fact, if you think about them like climbing a mountain, you'll do better as you wrestle through those challenges. And you can always get help if you need it, but also know that you have deeper reservoirs of strength than maybe what you anticipate. I also was able to sail around the world and sail the 7 seas. But I'm going to share with you now something that was actually harder for me than Everest. I get seasick really, really easy. And I don't know for you all how many of you have been seasick, but it's a miserable feeling. There's nothing worse in the world. I hate being seasick, and I've thrown up in every ocean of the world. That's a fact. Anyway, it was a race across the North Pacific. We started in China, and it was snowing, and we had to sail nonstop below Korea, below Japan, up to the Aleutian Islands, and down to Seattle on this boat. And it was like the big storms that you read about in The Deadliest Catch or you see on TV. These massive waves, 35 feet high, coming and hitting us. And from the side, we're getting 25-foot waves just smacking into the boat. These waves would get us totally wet, and we're cold and miserable. We're on watch for 4 hours and off watch for 4 hours, and having to try to sleep. And when you're down below, I got so seasick. I'm laying in the bottom of the bilge, and people are stepping over me trying to do their jobs. And I really realized that these are storms in life that just are most challenging. And it's the most challenging adventure I've ever done. If you look carefully at that photo and the picture of my face, as you can see the wear and tear as I'm trying to get through this challenge. And then what we realized over time is that we could take these massive waves that were coming up behind us, and we somehow found a way to use them to our advantage. And we turned our 33-ton sailboat into a surfboard. And we were able to scream down these waves at 40 miles an hour. And so all of a sudden, we turned that adversity that had made me so seasick into an advantage to help us move forward faster in life. And I know that you all can find ways too to turn your adversity into an opportunity for growth, and then to take that to new directions in your life and to take you in a different place. I've learned from climbing mountains that we can climb higher than we ever thought possible. Yes, we may be struggling along the way, but yes, we also have reserves of strength and power and the ability to make our way day by day up and climb those mountains. I also know from sailing across oceans that we can navigate our way through life. It's very hard to see the future. It's scary, it's like foggy, and yet we can make good decisions and know when to hold course and when to tack or navigate and work our way forward by zigzagging through life. Life is not a straight line to the summit. All those things have come together and enabled me to be successful. And I know that that adventure mindset is the key to enabling each of you to achieve more than you realize possible and also to navigate your way through life. Thank you very much. I appreciated being with you today.
Thank you, Martin. That was wonderful. Now we're going to welcome Jennifer Morgan-Smith. Jennifer is a licensed marriage and family therapist who has earned her MBA after working in a hospital and treatment center administration. She's an improved AAMFT supervisor, has worked in intensive outpatient and residential inpatient and outpatient settings. Her clinical interests include trauma-informed care, trauma treatment, stress management, and resilience. And is the co-founder of PassageWise, a training and consulting business. Jennifer loves people and providing opportunities for people to connect. Please welcome Jennifer as she talks on how there is not a vaccine for life.
Thank you. I'm excited to be with you guys today. In June of 2021, we were all pretty excited, right? Do you remember that feeling last summer when we were thinking that we were getting out of this whole pandemic? A Gallup poll suggested that 59% of Americans were highly optimistic about the future. Vaccinations were widespread, and we were really hopeful that this was all coming to an end. We'd been looking for some sign to tell us that this was over. I was super excited because I wanted to go travel. I wanted to see family and friends. I am a party planner. I like to gather people, and I was so excited to have some summer gatherings and just to get life back to normal. And then in the early mornings of July 2nd, I woke up and I physically could not get out of bed. Life came to a halt for me at that moment. My body hurt so badly that if I moved, just pain shot everywhere. And I lay there thinking, really, there is not a vaccine for life. There's not a way to avoid all the challenges of this human experience. And life's challenges don't discriminate. It happens to all of us. So I wanted to share a story, and I thought about it. I'm going to talk to these students, and I thought I'm going to tell them some stories today. Because I see storytelling as this really important part of how we grow and how we share our emotions, how we process through things, and how we learn who we are. And the stories that we choose to tell, as well as the stories that we choose not to tell, say a lot about us. So I thought, okay, I could come in and I could tell you guys these really happy stories. You know all those stories we share on Instagram? Those shiny, happy experiences, and I could come and I could be like, look, life is so great and things are so good. I could talk about my wedding day, and then I could talk about the birth of my daughters, or some other career success. And that would feel really safe. That'd feel really comfortable. That's what we do, right? We share that on social media. But that wouldn't feel genuine. That wouldn't feel real. And what would that teach us? And I started thinking about it, and I said, you know what? None of those days were actually perfect. So I thought about my wedding day. And the day before my wedding, the caterer called and said, I'm not showing up tomorrow. She was angry about something. She wasn't going to come, so we weren't going to have any food for our guests. That's a big deal. I had a lot of people coming. But she ended up coming. We talked that through. And I get to the reception, and I'm like, all right, we've made it through this day. And suddenly, the power goes out. So we're now in the reception. It's pitch black, and the rain just starts pouring. The wind is blowing, and I have this outdoor reception, right? So there's that pretty tent all decorated outside, and it is about to blow away. So my guests are holding it down, literally holding the poles down. And I'm like, yeah, this perfect day, it's not so perfect. This is not working out very well for me. And it turns out that none of that had any bearing on the success of my marriage, but it sure felt like we were beginning all of this on really shaky ground. So it was weird because almost as soon as that power had gone out, it came back on, the rain kind of simmered down, the wind stopped, and we were okay. So then I thought about my honeymoon. I'm like, all right, let's think of another happy day. That one wasn't so perfect, that wedding day wasn't. So our honeymoon was driving this across the country. This is a 1973 Volkswagen bus. And what could go wrong with that? That is a thing of beauty. So we're driving this from Utah out to Connecticut so I can attend graduate school. We're about 5 hours into the trip. The muffler falls off the car. Now, what am I going to do? we're in the middle of nowhere, the muffler's gone. Mufflers actually are really handy. They make it sound like you're not in some, it was like this massive sound just rolling through our ears like nonstop. And we're 5 hours into a 3 or 4 day trip. So the air conditioner then, or whatever these things have, they're not really air conditioners. Something happens with that. And it's August. Hot air starts blowing into the vents. We are now just sitting in this car. This is our only way across the country. This is our honeymoon. And did I mention I had 2 large dogs as well in the car? So I have 2 large dogs. These windows, the front ones roll down, but these others just kind of flip up, you know? And we've got hot air. So I'm like, we are so hot. And I could have just looked at this and said, this is a sign. We should not be married. This is bad. We are going to have a terrible life. We've got a wedding full of rain. The power's going out. Now we're driving this car across the country that's not even fit to drive across town. What were we thinking? And I could have told myself some really bad stories at that point in time. But we made it through that. And then let's fast forward past this Volkswagen bus that didn't have a muffler, didn't have heat pouring out of the vents, you know, all of these things. Let's fast forward past that because time keeps going. And I thought, you know what? Birth of my kids. That was great. Except when we started trying to have kids, we ended up having 2 miscarriages. No one told me that it was going to be that hard to bring kids into this world. Because you know what? No one really talks about miscarriages. No one really talks about infertility. Until you're trying to have kids, you have a miscarriage, and other people start sharing their stories with you. And it's like you've joined this secret club of just pain and loss and heartache. And you don't know what to do or how to move forward. And you wonder, did I do something to make all this happen to me? And then I wasn't told how hard it would be when my mom was diagnosed with early onset frontotemporal dementia, or how hard it was going to be when I took on the role of taking care of making sure that all of her needs were met. No one told me that that was going to happen in my life. And I watched her disappear cognitively and physically until she eventually couldn't swallow anymore. She forgot how to do that. And her breathing stopped. And those were days when I would ask myself, why me? Why did I have to go through this? I'm a good person. Like, I'm really nice. You guys would want to be friends with me. Like, I'm pretty fun. I spend a lot of time like gathering people and having fun with people. I'm kind and considerate. I even return those grocery carts, like after the grocery store, into those little, I don't know what those things are called, those little corrals that you're supposed to put in so they don't run into everybody's cart. I put them back in there. I even hang clothes back up when I try them on in a store, because I want to look out for other people. But at those moments, I told myself this story that I must have done something to deserve this. There must be something that I did. But what I realized is miscarriages, dementia, health problems, they have nothing to do with grocery carts. They have nothing to do with returning the clothes to the racks or looking out for other people. Miscarriages are incredibly painful. You feel lost, you feel broken. And watching my mother slowly disappear before me, watching her forget how to do things and to have to rely on other people to take care of her basic needs, and knowing she was aware of this decline, like she watched it, she knew it was happening. That was one of the hardest things I've ever done. And I wondered, why did she have to go through that? I could have asked again, what did she do to deserve this? And why did my family have to slowly watch her disappear and die in front of us? And then I also wondered, does this mean this is going to happen to me someday? Is this what's going to go on? And I felt like the world should just stop. You know those times that you just feel like everything that's going on around you, like everything else should just stop. But it doesn't. The world keeps spinning on its axis, time keeps ticking, and life continues around us despite all the pain and loss that we have. It just doesn't stop for our individual pain or heartache. I really wish I could figure out how to make it do that, because it would be nice to just take those breaths. And there isn't a cure for all these life experiences. And time just keeps moving forward, as time does. So let's return to July 2nd, when I woke up and I couldn't move. I couldn't walk. I couldn't get myself out of bed without this excruciating pain. And so very quickly, I went to this place of fear and terror. I was asking myself, what does this mean? Is this permanent? Will I lose my independence like my mom did? I cannot figure out how I'm going to get out of bed. How am I going to get dressed today? How am I going to get to the bathroom on my own? And I know my husband is sleeping next to me. And I know he'll help me get out of bed. But is that what my life is going to look like? And I realize at that moment, I'm like, okay, I look at the clock and it's 3 a.m. And I'm going to pretend things are just fine. Everything's fine. I don't need to get out of bed right now. Like, why? It's 3 a.m. I can sleep. This is just a really bad dream. I'm going to avoid this pain a little bit longer. I'll go back to sleep. It'll magically get better when I get up in a few hours. I'll just sleep a little bit longer. So it's fine, right? We say it's fine, everything's fine. So a few hours later, I wake up. And of course, nothing was any better. Because when we numb and do all that stuff, most of the time, that doesn't really fix anything after all. And at this point, I was terrified. I had to get out of bed. I had things to do. I needed to go to the bathroom, quite honestly. And I wondered, again, okay, is this permanent? How are we going to do this every day? I mean, this is the husband I got through the wind. I got through the miscarriages. I got through taking care of my mom. We got through all these challenges. I mean, we drove that bus across the country and we lived. And this is my x-ray. And this is why I can go to that place of terror so easily and so quickly. I'm not sure what shape that's trying to make, but it's really not natural. It's not what it's supposed to be doing. And so obviously I have some significant back issues. And at times I've really felt like I'm living on borrowed time. I've been waiting for a time where I'm not going to be able to do these basic things anymore. So I've got to push. I've got to accomplish. I've got to be perfect. I've got to do everything. I've got to cram everything in these moments. And I'm laying in that bed saying, I can't even get out of bed. I can't move. And I don't know what tomorrow is going to look like. I don't know what the next 10 minutes are going to look like. It's pretty terrifying. So why am I telling you these stories? Why am I telling you these heartache moments in my life? Why did I choose to do that? I'm supposed to be talking to you about resilience and encouraging you, and you can do this, and you can get these classes taken here at school. We can accomplish these things in life. And yet I'm just sharing you my heartache and my pain and my loss. But what I realized is we become more resilient when we face challenges, when we acknowledge all of our emotions, because we need to experience those so-called negative emotions. We always think like sad is negative. You know, we have to experience all those with those positive moments, those happy things. But sometimes the only way to build our resilience is to acknowledge that life isn't all about the good times. There isn't a cure that protects us from those uncomfortable, sad, terrifying experiences. And we experience and we grow so much more by facing the difficult and fear-inducing experiences head on. So sometimes we do what I did at 3 a.m. We try to escape. We try to numb, to run, to ignore all the unpleasant. And we think, okay, if I don't feel this, like everything's gonna be okay. It's all gonna be just fine if I just don't pay attention to what my emotions are. And then they won't happen, won't be real. But really, life is just painful and messy and hard and beautiful. When it's hard, we don't have to enjoy the struggle, but we really don't benefit from running and hiding from it. We learn so much by facing sadness, even facing fear, looking at a hard class or some hard challenge, and we say, okay, I'm gonna do it, I got this. And we know we got this one eye open and our hearts are full of terror and fear, and we're just gonna do it anyway. So as you can see, I can walk, I can move, I got myself out of bed this morning. This summer I ended up having back surgery. And I'm seeing improvement. I'm in the middle part of this story right now, though. And I'm not sure how this is gonna end. My spine's still crooked. And the middle parts, they're typically the hardest, most challenging parts of our stories. And we tend to hear the stories of people after they've overcome a big challenge, something big, and we admire them for that story and for the end of their story. And then we compare our middle. So when we're in the middle of some heartache or some difficulty, in the middle of school, something like that, and we compare ourselves to the end of their story. And the end sounds so much better. But really, the strength that you're developing comes in the middle of the story, in those painful days when we're facing the hardship and we're trying to find a way to have hope and to move forward. So I want you guys to ask yourselves, what challenge are you going through right now? And I won't make you yell them out. And what are you telling yourself right now about that experience? Okay? Think about that story that you're telling yourself. And what story do you tell yourself when those bad things happen? Maybe you've failed a test, or somebody around you has said, you know what, I don't want anything to do with you anymore. What are you telling yourself? Are you saying, oh, that's because, I've done something to deserve this? And then I want you to think about, how do the stories that we tell ourselves and those around us change how we feel? And do the stories we tell ourselves invite resilience, or are they stories that defeat us? So think about that. You see, life is full of yes and experiences. Yes, life is messy. Yes, it is hard. And it's beautiful. And sometimes that's happening at the same exact time. Something wonderful is happening to us at the same time something terrible is going on in our lives. Those miscarriages that we went through, they were so painful, and they challenged me in so many ways, and they changed my appreciation for my children, and I built connections, real connections with other people as we were able to share our stories of loss with one another. My mom's dementia, again, was one of the hardest things I ever had to have happen. It was so heartbreaking, but it was also, see, I just did a but it's an and. It was so beautiful to have the time and to serve her for 14 years, to spend that time with her, for her to be with my family all the time, and for us to learn how to care for people And it changed my family forever. It changed our family story. And I mean, really, standing in front of you today, like sharing these personal things, this is not a comfortable thing. It's pretty terrifying. Because, you know, we share things on Instagram that are happy and pleasant, right? But this is and so exciting at the same time. Because yes, and is such an important concept for us to understand. We really can experience both of these things simultaneously. Adversity is just part of this experience. So we need to expect that there's going to be some bad things that happen. And we can expect good things too. We get through that struggle by feeling everything and acknowledging all of our feelings. We really grow by feeling our emotions. We learn from these negative or painful things that happen to us. So let's just try to turn towards them and face them, rather than spend so much time and energy running, numbing, distracting, just forgetting that they're there. They're not as scary when we actually face them. Our experiences change us. We can grow from them. We can build such strength by looking at those hardships and feeling them. So I want you now to ask yourself, how does the story we tell change when we look at what our feelings are telling us? We have feelings for a reason. They tell us certain things. They give us messages. They tell us which direction to go, all of those things. Sometimes fear is just telling us that this is new. It's a new experience. Then, will the story we tell help us invite hope or hopelessness into our life? I shared with you, there's times I have invited hopelessness into my life with the stories that I tell. And I have to counteract that by telling a hopeful story to myself as well, and to start talking myself back into that ability to can do something. And then, is what we're telling ourselves working for us? Think about that. Is that story that you thought of when you thought of your challenge, is that working for you? So really, there isn't a vaccine for life. And you know what? I don't really want there to be one. Because I think the vaccine is really life itself. When we go through these experiences, we get stronger. We're better able to manage the struggle of this human experience. We're better able to figure out who we are and who we want to be. They transform us. We become better. And we're the entirety of our story, not just those shiny, happy parts. Those parts we share on Instagram. There's so much more to our stories than that. So what story will you tell yourself? Thank you, guys.
Okay, thank you, Jennifer. And now, Jennifer and Martin will be taking questions from our live audience and our online chat. How can I balance doing well at school and still focus on my mental health?
Take it away, Jen.
You want me to take it? Okay. How do we balance? Balance is kind of this tricky thing. I think that's one of those things that we strive to have, but sometimes it's not totally possible at every moment in our lives. But I think we have to look at what we're putting into our daily experience. And I think we have to say, okay, I've got all these school assignments, I've got work, and I think we have to balance that with our social. We have to make sure that we're having some fun in our lives, because A lot of times we just think, oh, well, I can't have fun, I can't enjoy myself because I've got these things I got to get done. I've got classes, I've got to do all that. And I think we also have to have fun.
Yeah, there's no question.
Yeah.
I also think taking a couple minutes to center yourself. I know as I get through life, sometimes I can't engage. I'm like, I just want to hang back. And so I've developed a trigger for myself on how I can get engaged. And I go like that. And that gets me in the game. It's just this conscious change in my own physiology that says, Martin, you've got to get more energized. And then sometimes if I'm on TV like we are today, I might get too nervous. And I'll put my two hands together and I'll take a couple breaths just to try to recenter myself and get where I'm calm and relaxed and present so I can be with you and share my experience with you, each of you emotionally. So very quickly, we can change that stress that we feel and then use that to our advantage. Also, as we balance those challenges, we can do little things along the way. If you study for an hour, then take a 10-minute break and go for a run or just jog, get some energy flowing. So watch how much time you spend with physical exercise, because that's a big driver of well-being. And so is sleep. When we all of a sudden drag ourselves down sleep-wise, it's so hard to recover. So sleep, eating right, physical exercise, and a little mindfulness, I think, goes a really long way.
I would agree. Yeah.
Thank you. Does anybody in our audience have a question for him? Not? Okay. Well, this question is for Jennifer. How and where do you find your strength to keep going in the long-term trials?
Wow, that's a good one. I think it's setting goals. It's really, for me, it's been trying to figure out what it is that I want to get done and what I want to accomplish. And I start to think about what I'm doing and what I'm saying and what I'm thinking about and if that's going to help me get there or not. I think that's a big part of how to do it. I mean, you talked about that when you set, like, how do I make those 2 steps up that mountain? And I think sometimes we think that it has to be like these giant steps or we have to just keep going. But really, little tweaks and little progress is still progress. And sometimes we slip back. I mean, you had to go back to base camp. Sometimes we slip back.
Yeah.
And that's okay.
It is. And it's a series of ups and downs,
Yeah.
right? It was going up and down Everest through which we acclimatized to the mountain and we built up the red blood cells. But without that constant getting stressed and then relaxing and recovering and then stressing yourself again, that's how we build resilience. And it happens in the moment, but it also happens over time. And that's one of the joys in life as we build our own character and our ability to take on bigger challenges in life.
Yeah, I think it's just easy for us to get tied into that idea that it has to be this big accomplishment. When
Right.
really 2 steps in an
Yeah.
hour,
Everest is just a series of
Yeah.
lots of little challenges all strung together,
as is life.
as is life.
Awesome. This one is for Martin. What has your experience been with mentors, and do you consider yourself a mentor?
Oh, I love mentors. In fact, I feel like I have tried very hard to just learn from those who've gone before. When I was thinking about setting out on my sailing adventures, I read about all the great British explorers. In fact, I loved what they did. They did things 10 times harder than what I did. They had no maps, they had no Gore-Tex, they had the right gear and the right kind of boats, and they would bump into reefs. Guys like Shackleton, who just went through misery day in and day out. And I wanted to test myself, but it was sort of emulating them and admiring them at first, then trying to emulate them and got to get a taste of what they felt. And then it was like I was conversing with them as I was going through my trial. And I'm like, oh, that's what you were feeling, and suffering with them. And we became a team. So I love both the opportunity to develop mentors in real life, where you have someone who you can develop a relationship with and ask questions and be vulnerable. And I also like the mentors and those that can inspire us that maybe are from history, and that they are both part of what builds strength and character within us.
Great. Again, does anybody in the audience have a question?
I have a question for you, Martin, because you've started so many businesses, but you can tell that. Do you want me to restart? Okay, so I had a question for Martin. It was that since you've started so many businesses and, obviously very busy work life, but I can tell you've also still really focused on pursuing your own hobbies like sailing and mountain climbing. So kind of how have you been able to balance the two? Do you feel like you just had to do a bunch of grunt work when you were younger and now you're at the point you can relax, or just how have you struck that balance?
I wouldn't say I'm relaxed yet, but I would say things come in seasons. When I was in Silicon Valley, I was working 80 hours a week, easy. And I found that to be super challenging, and I had to narrow down those extraneous things that I wanted to do, but I had to put them off. Then as I came to Utah, I had a more opportunity to have a mixture of work and adventure, and I kind of put those things together. When I was sailing around the world, I wasn't worried about work. I had to let work go, and I had to deal with the consequences of not managing some of those businesses. But when I came back, I was able to patch it all back together and realize I had done that sailing experience. So you have to take things in the season and evolve it, and how we map out which comes first and in what sequence we take on life has a lot to do with how ultimately we'll be successful.
Awesome, thank you.
Thanks.
This question is for the both of you. How do we find trust when you've been deceived and manipulated?
Oh.
Yeah. I think we've all experienced that. We've all
Betrayal
lost.
or
Yeah.
a lack of trust in somebody that we put faith in?
Yeah,
Sure.
somebody hurting us. Those are also moments that change who we are, and we have to really, I think we have to face that betrayal, that heartache. I think we have to face that, and we have to look at why did we invest something into that relationship? What were we trying to get out of that relationship? And is that something that we still want? And how do we get that? And so it would be easy, we could just go, okay, heartbroken, not going to do it again.
Right.
I'm done.
But you have to do it again. You
Well,
have to try.
It's good to try. That's the only way you're going to get another relationship or have another opportunity where you do grow.
Yeah. I think one of the things we have to do is remind ourselves of all the other relationships that have been good, and to show gratitude and be grateful for all the times that relationships have worked out well. And then as we think and move gratitude into the future, it's really called hope. So hope and gratitude are really powerful concepts. Hope is about how we perceive the future, and gratitude hopefully is how we think of the past. And as we bring those more into our life, that changes that storyline that we tell ourselves. That storyline that Jen referred to as her story, and the stories of adventure that I've had throughout my life from when I was a little kid and how I built those all up, they're validation points about who we are and what our identity is. And if we constantly go through this process of renewing our hope and reminding ourselves of all that we're grateful for, I think they become huge opportunities for us to renew and rejuvenate ourselves each and every day.
Yeah, and the only thing I think that I would also add is not everybody is trustworthy, and not everybody deserves our story. And so it's okay if we don't share our story with everyone, and it's okay if we don't build a close relationship with some people, but it's really identifying what you want in that person and from that person that you're building that relationship with, and looking for that in them. Not everybody is going to be worthy of your trust. And I think that's okay.
Absolutely. And so we all venture forth.
Yep.
We take on life and embrace these challenges, Jen described it in terms of challenges. I described it in a way of inviting those challenges and becoming adventures for us. And that as we move forward, they build us into who we are. And that story of who you are is still what you're building. But it's a great story, and enjoy the journey. Thank you.
No. Another invitation for the audience, if you have any questions.
What is a good mental hygiene practice that we can apply daily in our lives?
That's a good one. So I like to look at 5 areas of health. It's our social, our emotional, our mental, our physical, and our moral health. And if we focus just on one of those 5 things, or even 2 of those 5 things at a time, and ignore the rest, we're kind of out of balance. So it goes back to kind of that idea of if all you're doing is schoolwork and you're not having any fun, you're not going to be really mentally stable. You're not going to enjoy yourself. So if you can look at yourself and look at your life and say, okay, what am I doing socially? How am I building up myself mentally? Am I developing some strategies? Am I learning things? What am I doing physically, as Martin mentioned? So looking at all of those, am I morally making the decisions that are congruent with what my beliefs are? How do I feel about all of those things? And practicing that. And Martin mentioned like mindfulness practice. I think one of those things too is turning off your phone and getting some adequate sleep and eating well. Just those practices every day of just saying that I'm important enough to spend some time to take care of myself. That would be a practice I would suggest every day.
The only thing I would add to what Jen said, I agree with everything, is just also to assess how much of a sense of connection do we feel.
Yeah.
And are we finding the connection either through a friend or a close relative, or are we finding that sense of connection to our school or to an organization that we belong to? But that sense of belonging and purpose that comes from that is an important part of that connection.
Absolutely.
We had another question in the audience.
I think it's pretty inspiring to see how highly motivated the 2 of you are. And so my question would be, how did you find that motivation? Was it through goal setting? And if that was the case, for people like myself and many others, what if we don't have a direction yet, so we don't really know where we want to be?
You know, I think one of the things that I have to look back on as I think about what made me do all of this, it was really curiosity. And one of the things I've seen about, Jen mentioned cell phones, if we're constantly satiated with our phone and we can get instant gratification, we don't actually develop our own curiosity to pursue our own interest. Someone else is satisfying us and keeping us in that consumer mode where we're just consuming content. So if we can turn off the phones, and maybe we start with boredom, and then all of a sudden boredom gives us that spark of creativity, and like, oh, I wonder if I could do this, or I wonder if I would be interested in doing that. And then there's that exploration phase where we're going out and trying different things. We're not sure if we like it, we're not sure if we want to pursue it. And then we get to discovery. And discovery is like, hey, I like to do that. I actually want to pursue that, or maybe even one day make that part of my career. And then you discover ways that you can add value to be a job, or add value to a job or a career. And so that process evolves as we go forward. But it has to start with this question within you, what if, or what would that be like? And that curiosity then begins, every adventure starts with a choice. It's, do I choose to stay with who I am, exactly the way I am, or do I choose to venture forth into the unknown, where I don't know how it's going to play out? And am I willing to risk the uncertainty and the failure and the trial and the challenge? I want you to know, more than anything, that the joy of that journey and the joy of progression that comes is so much better than the joy of staying in that status quo and of just satiating yourself, playing video games, or checking out social media. Enjoy the journey. That's what it's all about.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that.
Great.
I think sometimes too, when you're at this phase of trying to figure out who you want to be when you grow up. I mean, there's still times that I'm trying to figure out who I want to be when I grow up, because I don't know if I want to grow up. But who do you want to be? What do you want to be like? And what do you want to do? I think when we're like at that beginning point, we put a lot of pressure on ourselves that we have to get to this place really quickly, and that we have to accomplish, and we have to get where our mentors are, where those people that the end of their story, where they're at. And it really is taking that moment to be curious about, do I like doing this? What do I like about it? What don't I like about it? Does that fit in a different way somewhere else? Can I take my strengths in a different direction? Is this something that I'd want to develop, a strength I'd want to develop? Is this something I'd want to do? And being compassionate with yourself. I think it's huge. We're not very compassionate. The things sometimes that we tell ourselves are things we would never tell some other human being. And so if we can look at how we can be compassionate and say, it's all right. I hated statistics. That's okay. Not everybody has to like statistics. That's fine. What do you like? What do you want to get involved with?
Hey, Jen, maybe it would be worth it to review some of our keys to strengthening resilience as a kind of a summary.
Okay.
Could we show that? Why don't you start with the first few?
Okay, so we're going to learn to live with uncertainty.
And we're going to use adventure to build our tolerance for uncertainty. This idea of stepping out of our comfort zone is going to increase our tolerance and willingness to deal with that uncertainty and make us more comfortable with it.
Yeah, I mean, every day is uncertain, right? So as I just mentioned, it's being kind to ourselves and other people.
That's self-compassion.
Yeah, it's self-compassion, and it's building, like we've talked about, those connections with other people. We learn so much from connecting to other people around us. And we can do that by taking time to play and laugh, too.
Absolutely. It has to be fun
It
along
has
the journey.
to be.
And sometimes it's not always fun in the moment. It's about deferred gratification. When I've stood on those top of those mountains, the reason that was so meaningful for me is because I'd suffered all the way up, all right? But our ability to defer gratification. You can turn on your phone and you can get instant gratification, and you can laugh and videos and stuff like that. But if you want to build in achievement, you have to then defer that, and it comes later.
Yeah. Fun isn't all about the entertainment that's coming. Fun comes from our connections to other people.
Yeah. And to that point, well-being and nurturing our well-being and ourselves isn't about being happy all the time.
Nope.
Happiness and well-being are two separate constructs. Happiness is what we're getting an instantaneously kind of a satisfaction. Well-being has a lot more to do with joy, and are we thriving in all those areas of our life that you mentioned, those 5 areas.
Yeah. I think it's also important we have on our list to set realistic expectations, because sometimes, like I mentioned, we get to this place and we think, okay, I'm here, I just took this class, I should know everything, and I should be able to do everything that I want to do. Goals should be reached right now. You should be at Everest at day 2. I'm not sure why it took you that long.
Well, when we do have those summits, we have to then take time to reflect. Whether we've succeeded or failed, and every adventure we take youth on through our Summit Journeys program, we also build in reflection time so that they can process and think about what just happened. If they've succeeded, we want them to then transform their identity and say, if you can achieve that summit in your life, what does that say about your future? What other mountains could you climb? Or how did that mountain and what you learned solving those problems, how does that relate to a math problem? And by the same token, if they failed and weren't successful, then this idea of building on that experience and saying, what would I have to learn to be successful next time? And to, as you said, not be too hard on yourself.
I think that's really important.
Both how you talk to yourself, the stories we tell, are all part of that adventure mindset. And that building those success stories are those validation points as we embrace adventure or we embrace life's challenges. We need to remember that we need to be flexible and optimistic as we adapt to the circumstances and find new ways to navigate forward in life. And also that we just want to be willing to embrace the challenges for personal growth with that can do, want to, and will do mindset.
Yeah, I would agree.
This is the last question. What is the best way to help someone struggling with mental health who doesn't want to open up about it?
So I guess I get this one as a therapist. I think one of the things we have to recognize is we're not totally responsible for somebody else's mental health either. And each one of us, you can't force somebody to talk about the trauma that they've experienced. You can't force somebody to change. We can't really even force ourselves to change, right? And so we have to be respectful, but I think empathy, having that for somebody else and asking them questions about how they're feeling and sitting with them with their story, even when they don't want to express it, and saying, it's okay that you don't want to share your story with me. It's okay that you're not in a place that you want to talk about what's going on with you. Let's just sit together. Let's just be and be present with that person and build the relationship with them. Because we really can't, I can't say, Martin, now I know you had this really challenging moment. I need you to share it with me right now. And then what I'll do is I'll tell you to do A, B, and C, and everything will be better. Then we'll move on to the next trauma that you've had or experienced, and we can solve that. That's not how any of this works. That's not how we work. And so having empathy for ourselves and having empathy for other people is the best way that we can work and help somebody else go through their difficult challenges as well. I think it's keeping that in mind.
Absolutely. And the other thing is, even if individuals aren't able to fully open up, one of the things you can do if you recognize they're struggling is to, one, be with them, and two, maybe help them identify what area of their life are they struggling in. They see their struggle as this overwhelming thing that's all homogeneous and all together. And then maybe pointing out that, oh, you may not be succeeding in school, but their relationships are going okay, or other areas of their life are going okay. And to then box it in. It's not that the world is crashing. The sky isn't falling. Maybe it's just one element that is gone off the rails. And then once they can see it in for a discrete, specific thing that's not going to last forever, maybe their ability to cope with and deal with that issue becomes a little bit more manageable. So trying to, even though you don't even know what the problem is, help them see it in a better perspective.
Yeah, because when we have a bad part of our day, a lot of times we say, well, that day was terrible. But when we step back and we look at the bigger picture, we can see, oh yeah, that part of my day, that wasn't so great. This part of my day, that was better. There's different things, but it's oftentimes our brains are so conditioned to believe just and focus on that horrible thing that happened versus be able to look at the whole picture.
Mountains look a whole lot different when you're at the bottom staring up at this huge thing, or when you're at the top looking down and realizing it. And sometimes we have to remember, from what angle are we seeing our world?
Yeah, so very true.
Okay. Awesome. Well, we want to thank, can we get a round of applause for Jennifer and Martin, please? Thank you. We just want to thank them for taking the time to speak with our students, live audience, and our online audience as well. We want to thank to all of our viewers. Thank you for tuning in. We realize this has been a tough time. You are not alone, and your feelings of anxiousness and uncertainty, we hope that you were able to find some answers today and support from our speakers. If you need more assistance, we want you to know about our wonderful resources available free of charge for our UVU students. Well, I think that's it for today. Thank you all for coming.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.